you're starting to infringe on people's freedom to do what they want with their property, individuals. Death by 1,000 cuts with these like little admin fees.
That's where they want to keep it kind of local. That's what they did. The hard part of that, it's happening, and I don't want to scare any of your, future or existing clients, but
No,
it's
please
like what,
scare them.
it's like what Fishers and Carmel are doing, right?
Oh,
and
yeah,
it's
the
like,
rent cap.
This is the rent cap, and it's exactly what happened in St. Louis about a decade ago. And now prior to every single rental, you have a municipality inspection done.
Yeah,
and it's like HA or housing authority. It's like them. Like they come in, they make sure everything's buttoned up. If not, they're going to fail you. And then they don't come out for another 2 weeks, right? And that's where they're kind of pushing away these investors that need to get this property rented quick. Where your Mrs. Jones neighbor down the road, can potentially hold out for another, for those 2 or 3 weeks, whatever the case is, because they have one individual property. And that's my worry is with those two municipalities, Fishers and Carmel, that it's going to get to that point. Rent cap, and then it's going to be like rental registrations, and then it's going to be renter registrations, which is what St. Louis does. Person signs you a lease, they bring your lease into there, and they pay $50 for a rental certification to be able to rent that house. And then every year it's a renewal that they have to pay, and so do you as not you guys, but the property owner in that.
You're just creating all death by 1,000 cuts with these like little admin fees.
Yeah, but that's where that's where they want to keep it kind of local. These local investors, and that's really it. These big players times 100 homes, it really starts to cut into. Cut into it, or they have, if you don't live within 50 miles of the radius of your zip code of your house. Yeah. So the one in St. Louis is a really tough market in general,
and that's the entire city of St. Louis.
It's pockets, but like the northwest corner, which is a really nice area. That pocket's it's hit pretty hard. Okay, that's where a lot of properties were at that we managed. But
I mean, I think it's fascinating because on the one hand, I can kind of understand trying to keep the national like big hedge fund investors out, and it's like I don't care if the investor is necessarily local, but I want them to, to have some sort of connection to the address in just terms of like, they have a small enough portfolio to know like, hey, this is real. This is a real property with a real person living in it that I'm buying. Because once it starts to become, just too divorced from that, like that's just when really sad stuff starts to happen. And it just becomes something where I feel like the only person winning is that, that capitalist on Wall Street. Right. And so, that's, we're not in a position where we're not necessarily, turning away that business. They've got other property management firms they can work with. But, so we work with a lot of these like mom and pop investors, and, I kind of think of it from like an economic standpoint, what Carmel and Fishers are doing. We're like, we've talked about that on here. I don't know how positively that necessarily affects the market to say, hey, we only want a certain amount of rentals. Because at that point, like you're not just pushing out your national players. Like you're starting to infringe on people's freedom to do what they want with their property, individuals.
Yep, exactly right.
And that's, I don't necessarily agree with that.
Yeah. So. I think there's gonna be a flood of listings in the next couple of years, both those two. From these massive players is my thought on it. The non-owner occupied tax is a big one already. Just these scenarios are going to hit them, and they're just going to say it's just too much. Yeah. That's my thought on it.
I think you hit the nail on the head, because I think we've also talked about this a little bit on the podcast, but the same thing happened in my neighborhood recently. Like we passed a rental cap where like the number of rentals that exist right now is the highest it can be. And those who own those properties, I don't think there's any large investment firms. I think it's just people who built and then eventually moved on but kept their old house. Just maybe a little bit of a short-sighted decision, because, just as an example, my wife and I have considered someday keeping this house but moving on, and now we can't do it. So,
well, tough. That's why it's so many of the HOAs that are doing that, because yours is not the only one. There's a lot around, like almost any home. I'd say it's like at least a 50-50 shot that if I'm looking at a home that's listed and it's in an HOA controlled neighborhood, like there's a 50-50 shot there's going to be rental restrictions. But a lot of them are doing that percentage cap, but then adding the stipulation like, you know, you're allowed in if you've been, you know, if you've already owner occupied this for like a year or 2 years. And I think that's at least that's more reasonable to say like, okay, clearly like you didn't just buy this as an investment. This has been your family home. Like you should be allowed to hold on to it if you want to.
It's going to be tough, you know, in the years to come for rentals, but I think we'll do just fine in Central Indiana overall. These big cities are going to be the ones that are going to struggle with it. It's my thought on it.
Yeah, you got a lot of people that have over several decades have been buying these big cities just as a, you know, it's like a blue chip stock, right? Buying New York City real estate or something. It's not just nationally, it's internationally. People have just been parking capital in these properties, and when you start limiting what people can do with their properties, like people have to let them go.
Yep, no other option.
Yeah,
it happens. But,
well, it's a nice positive note to end on, huh?
Yeah. Well, it's certainly an interesting note.
Yeah.
Like because I think, you know, that actually kind of makes me wonder just how much of it is being driven by, hey, we've got a housing crisis. Where do we create the supply? We have to just get it out of the hands of investors. And that's, you could definitely argue that is a populist position to say like, maybe that's good. That's good for the people to have more inventory.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, like with apartments, you see them going up everywhere. You know, that's just the reality that we're seeing. It's your 4, 5, 6, 7 stores on the bottom, you know, and your franchise stores, and then you've got your apartments above it. That's going up everywhere in Central Indiana.
Yeah.
You know, we went to St. Paul about a month ago to visit some in-laws, and same scenario up there. You know, right over the border in Wisconsin, same scenario. It's like that's what's happening right now is because the housing side is just a shortage of it. You know, it's just being held and. You know, we had a big name player in our neighborhood, and it was vacant for 8 months. You know, and it's like that's not helping anybody. You know, at all. It's like, come on, you know. But it's just a lack of oversight where y'all would have had someone out there 15, 20 times during that amount of time.
Oh yeah,
you know, just checking on it, figuring out what's going on. You know, and
our property manager should have noticed in that at that point, but also the owner, if the property manager hadn't noticed, the owner definitely would, because they would have, if it was a private owner with it like, you know, less than 20 units, like they would have felt it in their cash flow. Whereas like that's the problem with these hedge funds, they don't feel it. Yeah. Like it's just an SOP for an intern somewhere.
That's exactly right.
And it's like
that's exactly right.
You know, they don't even. It's a drop in the bucket compared to all the you know, this overall cash flow picture they have.
That's exactly why I started what I'm doing. You know, I wanted to get back into the real, you know, the real side of real estate and not just being a, you know, number and not just looking at the bottom line. So I feel like I'm doing good so far. And
you can check out our full library of episodes wherever you get your podcasts.